The Sidebar podcast is made possible thanks to Rye fucking Smiles. Rye fucking Smiles are the only condescension certified smiles on the market. You heard it from your ex-girlfriend and that smug ethics professor. Now, hear it from me. Rye fucking Smiles are in vogue and are fucking back. They're smarter than you, and they know it. Why don't you? Maybe because you don't have a Rye fucking smile. So turn that frown upside down and judge someone today. Rye fucking Smiles. Moron.
You're in the candy shop, trying to make those panties drop, when you realize they're out of gummy peaches. Welcome to the Sidebar. I'm Sebastian Morales, filling in for Clint Myers-Novak, who is currently applying for a dishwasher repairman job at Sears. Guitar World is a monthly music magazine devoted to guitarists. It contains interviews, album and gear reviews, and song tablature. Today I'm joined by Andy Slaughter Kittleberg, whose contributing article, I'm Just Riffin', Tales from the Tour, covers stories from the road with upcoming bands and under-the-radar festivals. Andy, welcome to the Sidebar.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here, finally.
Now, you've been a tough get for the Sidebar. You've been on tour pretty much for the last year and a half.
Oh, yeah.
And your tour just ended a couple days ago. Now, tell us, what are you coming off of? What's out there? Where are you? Where are you now?
Well, currently I'm actually in Toronto, which is a pretty nice little town. I end up there every few months. Kind of, everyone comes through at some point, comes through Toronto. If you're in music, you end up in Toronto. It's Nashville, Toronto, and sometimes it's Rome.
I wasn't aware Toronto was a big music hub.
Oh, it's a huge music hub. Yeah, it's kind of the secondary North American music capital. Like, if you are in rock, metal, the genre, if you are in the scene, then that is the first place you gotta conquer in order to move on to the big leagues. And so I'm coming off the 2018 Inferno tour, which is just all of the best under, scoped out bands that are coming up, and that's where a lot of record labels are, and a lot of people are there just to kind of check the place out. And so I'm here with my band, and we're just...
Oh, your band?
Yeah.
So was your band in the Inferno tour?
Yeah.
I was under the impression you were following the festival, but you're following it and you're in it.
Well, I mean, I follow the festivals that I'm also in, so I'm sometimes following other bands while in my band, and I'm sometimes following my band.
Well, you essentially you sub in when a musician can't make their gig.
Yeah. And
so you're sort of the understudy to all of the bands.
Every single band that you see on stage, on tour, anywhere, I can play whatever they need me to.
And you were subbing in for which band, and what happened to the drummer fell ill?
Yeah. Actually, for that one, it was a honor. I was playing for Venom in one of their. They were headlining the whole thing.
And this is Christian rock.
This is Christian rock. It's
Canadian Christian rock, to be more specific. It's a different genre of Christian rock. Yeah. Less rock, more Christian.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the kind of cool part about Canadian Christian rock is they're getting back to their Christian roots, and I think that the Christian church has kind of branched out to do a lot of different things. And I don't subscribe, but I'm there. I'm a fan of the music, and it's good music, even if they're talking about Jesus and stuff.
Now, tell me about your band Flamethrower.
Oh man, that is probably the heaviest hitting band that I've been with since I've been touring.
This is the band that you're currently with.
This is the band I'm currently in. And so we got Mikey Domination. He's the lead singer, and he's a friend of mine who we go back to high school. Actually, we went to high school together.
And where'd you go to high school?
We went to high school in Haverford, Connecticut.
I don't know it personally, but if it's in Connecticut, that's as close to Canada as I could find vibe-wise.
Yeah. I would have to agree. I think that's why I just got used to Toronto, because I'm already up there basically, and if all I have to do is take a train to go up to Canada and put on some sweaty pants and some bigger wool shirts, and then just become more like slightly more Christian to fit into the rock world, then that's what I'm gonna do.
Even in the summertime, you wear that.
That's all Canadians wear that at all times. The Canadian tux, the jean on jean, no one wears that.
Nobody wears that.
It's just heavy wool.
That's an American myth.
It's like, Mexican food, tacos, not real.
Tacos aren't real.
Tacos aren't real outside of America. Like, what we know to be Mexican food is only from America. And so what we know to be the Canadian tuxedo, that's not what it is.
Well, I beg to differ in a way, because not 2 weeks ago, our beloved researcher, the Internetty Harper, was on vacation in Mexico, and a Oaxacan grasshopper taco wasn't fully dead, and it bit her lip pretty bad, and she got an infection, and she was in Mexican Oaxacan infirmary where she developed MRSA infection.
Yeah, I've actually been through one of those. I went to Guadalajara with a band a few years back. I'm pretty sure that was Satan's Brutal Torture Machine, and we just went through all of Mexico, spreading the word of death metal, and that was a fun one, because something you don't know about Mexican death metal is it's actually very happy. And they're all really happy to be up there. And it sounds like death, and like all heavy metal, I think it gets a bad rap because everybody thinks it sounds like death and decay. But we're really talking about quinceañeras, and we're talking about throwing like piñatas around when it's in Mexico. And if people took the time to just break down the song, I think everybody would really relate,
Well, you are a piñata band, and you like to load your piñatas with all kinds of different candies, and sometimes you like to change it up, and sometimes what do you put in there to keep your audience on their toes?
Well, sometimes we put in firecrackers, and then we just hit the piñatas into the audience.
And they're lit. Are they lit firecrackers?
Oh, absolutely. They explode on contact.
And do people get hurt?
Well, no, yes. Some people have gotten burned slightly, and I think that comes with the territory of being at a death metal concert, because you're putting yourself out there, and anything can happen, really. So I just go with the punches or with the burns, and a couple of them we put live scorpions in and just chucked piñatas at bands we didn't like. We threw them up on stage, and the piñatas were received as gifts, and then we just watched them open the piñatas, and the horror that comes across their faces as they're just crawled over with these dangerous killer animals. And I think it's the best way to kind of play some mind games, is just a gift, like a Trojan horse, but a death metal piñata.
I sort of see. I got out of the piñata game years ago. But if I was still in it, I think I would relate a little more to just the piñata whacking strategy, because you like to sing the contents out of the piñata. You're a screamer and you're a guitar player. Now, getting back to your contribution to Guitar World and your monthly article, Just Riffin', tell us about some of the bands that you were on tour with this past tour.
Oh, man. Okay. So, one of the most recent tours I did was the last year of the Vans Warped Tour, and I am so sad that this thing is going, because it really was one of the best ways to meet other bands, and you would meet so many different people there, and it's been going on for 23 years, and I've been at every single one. The last band that I was there with was Punch Stalker in the Face, and that band was a great band because, you know, it was just three of us just thrashing and just shredding all up and down the stage. And I myself, I went back to my roots. I had my axe in one hand and my bass in the other, and I was just double fisting the chords.
And when you say axe, you don't actually mean a guitar, you mean an actual axe.
I had a real axe, a fire axe, that I was just chopping up the wood of the stage as I was going.
And you're an advocate for tree chopping because you say when you record the tree screams, it's sort of a new take on metal, metal on wood.
Look, what people don't understand is that everything creates sound. Everything has a natural vibration. And when you cut down a tree in a forest, it does make a sound. It screams for its life because trees are alive. And I think that there is nothing more metal than life itself from the earth being pulled up and emanated into the world. Like, being able to destroy something so big and powerful, that is what metal is all about. Just taking down the structures of man.
And your album, Screaming at Trees, actually influenced M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh yeah, The Happening.
Yeah,
that was
indirectly because of you and your band. Now you're not giving credit. M. Night Shyamalan says that, oh well, you know, ideas are, once you think of an idea, it's out there in the zeitgeist and it's up for grabs essentially. But it wasn't a lawsuit, but it was a cease and desist.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he started writing that. We looked up the first draft, and the first draft was literally a week after the album came out. And we even talked about one of the songs in the album was called "The Trees Are Doing It," and it was talking about the trees killing humanity. And I mean, he just ripped that. He got Mark Wahlberg on board, and he made what I think was a subpar tribute.
Because it wasn't faithful to the source material.
No.
Now, you did something interesting. Instead of actually taking him to court, a court did rule in your favor that you were allowed to replicate his film word for word and scene for scene, since there was so much similarities between the two. So you made your own movie.
Yeah.
That is shot for shot with different actors. It is musical. So it's The Happening, the musical.
The entire thing is sung, and the entire thing is in death metal.
It's death metal, but the trees sing.
The trees are just
these are the
around.
hardest trees, right? Only the hardest wood, right? Oak, I think, is right. What kind of trees did you use? What was the?
I mean, oak is a good one. We use
cherry.
We use mostly willow because the what I've found in trees is that the softer the leaves, the harder the core.
And you found out that it was a myth that the willows weep.
They don't weep. They yell.
They thrash.
They yell and they pummel.
So you were in a forest and you filmed this concert movie, and you were on tour with the Vans Warped Tour, and you were performing as you were covering and writing for some of the other bands. And some of these bands are newcomers to the scene. They look up to you.
Yeah, they do.
And why? What separates Slaughter from other established musicians, metal heads and gearheads and motherfuckers?
Well, I mean, Andy Slaughter Kittelberg that's a name in the metal world. I am a name, and that's just brand recognition. Comes with a little bit of a perk. So if maybe a band comes up, Pig's Blood on Mondays, that was a band from the tour. They showed up at our filming, and they were like, Slaughter, and I looked at them, I said, yeah, boys. And they said, okay, how do we make ourselves?
And I just want to interrupt you because you said, yeah, boys, but it's actually 4 women named Carrie.
It is all of them named Carrie, and spelled different, each and every one.
Well, you have to stand out in some way.
Right. So
they stop you?
They stop me. They ask, how do we stand out? I said, look, boys, there's only a couple ways that you can make yourself marketable. You either got to be good or you got to be big. And Pig's Blood on Mondays, they're not very good. So I told them to get big. So the only way they could do that is by getting real people and hanging them on meat hooks and swinging them back and forth like a pendulum while they're playing. You know, to remind the audience of the passage of time and how we all have to take each moment by moment. And I think the important thing to remember about the Slaughter brand is that I do some stuff that other people might deem irresponsible or grotesque, but it's all in the name of, you know, education to a point. Like, I want people to learn how to live their lives fully.
And you collect stop signs. Now on the road, you're known for just plucking one out.
I don't think anybody should ever stop, ever.
And that's part of your mantra, right?
Don't stop.
Don't stop. And you're muttering that to yourself all the time. And you actually haven't stopped in 8 months, really. You don't sleep. Well, I shouldn't say you don't sleep, but you walk as you sleep. You're sort of like
I just meditate.
You're like a land shark.
Yeah.
Because sharks don't stop to sleep. They just drift as they sleep. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you find yourself in strange areas.
I just meditate deeply as I'm going. And a lot of times it's up to my publicist or my bandmates or someone who I'm working with to guide me. And sometimes they lose track. So at one point, I was doing a show in Madrid and I woke up in Morocco. And I don't know how I got across the ocean, but I did. And I woke up in Morocco and I woke up in a bazaar.
In the Casbah.
In the Casbah.
Hanging from a meat hook.
And that's how I got the idea that would later give me my name of Slaughter.
Right. And your first album, Flies in the Hole, came directly from the meat hook.
It did, because, you know, when you're up there for so long, I was up there, some people told me, for 36 hours straight.
And this is a Moroccan meat hook. This is not to be confused with the New Jersey meat hook.
And those things, like, the Moroccan meat hook is a bit dirtier and longer. And I was in the Casbah in Morocco is I don't want to say unclean, but it's not clean.
It's a filthy shithole.
It is it's disgusting. It's just
in my experience. Nothing is has a bigger hole or is filthier than the Moroccan Casbah.
And I looked around and I just saw these people were like flies on the wall in this filthy shithole. And I also felt flies in the hole where the meat hook had gone into my skin. And I just thought, you know what? This would be a really, really sick album name. And then I just did it. And I got my band together. I got my band Lucifer's Distortion. And we just made that album.
And you're hellbound on success. It's obviously a niche market. Metal isn't as mainstream as it was, say, in the early 80s.
Yeah, I think I got on. I was, you know, I was a big fan of Death, Obituary, some of the early bands, the pioneers, and I got on after, you know, Death kind of started to slope down, and it was something that I always loved to do, and I have always loved. And I don't think it has its place anymore. You know, we've moved on to pop and we've moved on to other things, and that's just not. Those are flat. You know, you can't go around sacrificing people to pop. Like, that's not. You can't light someone on fire to pop. Like, it doesn't work.
Well, it doesn't work in the sense that it's not. You're not going to find it on the radio. It's a grassroots campaign. You have to get out there with your band. You have to find these people, and a lot of places that you've been playing at are Bible camps.
Yeah.
Churches, youth picnics. You're not neo-Nazi organizations, but
Well, I mean, I don't.
I wouldn't. It's known that these type of groups, even though you don't support these groups,
No.
these type of groups listen to your music and it sort of motivates them.
Yeah, I don't like to align myself with neo Nazis, especially in any time period, but especially in this time period where they're becoming actually a thing again. But death metal has been given a bad, a bad rap because it belongs to a certain sect of people, and I'm trying to make it available to all people. If you celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or Kwanzaa, you should be able to just enjoy some death metal.
And you don't you don't believe in praying the gay away. You believe in screaming the gay away.
Well, the only way you're going to change is if you exert as much emotion as it takes to keep it in.
So you'll go to these conversion camps with your band, and you will just scream the gayness right out of these campers. Where does it go?
And I scream at the campers, and so again, sound waves have an effect on human bodies, and if you hit a perfect resonance with the person's soul or with the person's frame, it blows certain parts of their being away. Like, you can literally get blown away. And so we just play and scream until we hit a note that just pops out the gay part like a Jenga block.
And you have these gayness containment units, sort of like Ghostbusters. So when it pops the gayness out, you slide the little contraption under, and it keeps the gayness. And so you have a gay container that you have in your band's firehouse.
I even have a warp reactor on the end of my guitar that the more I play, the faster I play, it charges it up so that when the gay finally pops out, we can rope it down and then bring it into the box. No. And yeah, we have a firehouse. It's my own firehouse, complete with a fire pole, two decks, and we got our own car.
And aren't you worried that that unit isn't sustainable? Aren't you worried that somebody from the EPA is going to come by and make you shut it down, and you'll just release all the gayness out into what city? Where is your home base? Now you're talking to us.
I'm currently in Toronto, but my home base is in Topeka, Kansas.
So aren't you worried that you're just going to unleash all the gayness onto Topeka, Kansas?
I don't think the EPA is interested. They've called a couple times, but Scott and I are on great terms, and as far as the gayness goes, it's not going to break out anytime soon. And we haven't been able to recreate a containment unit, so we're pretty much down to one, and we're hitting capacity. So I am expecting a breakout of some, because the gayness, some of the gayness mates are starting to conspire, and they throw riots every once in a while, and conditions down there are not great, but we're just gonna keep it doing what we're doing, and because we do make money off of a lot of these exorcisms, for lack of that's pretty much what the gayness exorcisms. And I'm just trying to rope down all of the gay that I can. And at some point, we're going to have to find a better way of doing things.
Tell me about Zul, the Sumerian demigod.
Yeah, he's Sumerian, exactly. My 14th album, Zul's Sacrifice.
Well, that's what I was referring to. I didn't think that you were actually speaking to a deceased demigod.
Oh no, that album is a direct plea.
Defunct civilization.
That album is a direct plea to Zul to return in order to correct our society. It's that entire thing is a prayer, and if you actually play it backwards,
it's the theme to the 80s cartoon Gummy Bears.
Yep. The whole
bouncing
thing.
Here and there and everywhere. Gummy bears.
And you got to play it in 14 times speed backwards too in order to get the because the theme song's 24 seconds, and the whole album is like, 46 minutes.
It's fall, and that can only mean one thing. Hot, squishy pumpkin farts. Luckily, there's Your Diapies. Yes, Your Diapies. Your Diapies delivers the Rosh Hashanah and the Yom Kippur where you need it most. And best of all, they're cheap. For the most reliable adult diapers on the market, Your Diapies. For the kosher in your knish, Your Diapies. Your Diapies. When other diapers won't do. Support for the Sidebar podcast is also brought to you by Plates for Rent, the unsung hero of the sandwich, the underdog under your dog, the porcelain platform of perfection. You're on board, aren't you? Of course you're not. Your plate. Hey, who's going to do the dishes now that the missus is out of the kitchen? Hey, Addie? Addie, who wrote this? You wrote this? No? All right, I'll just do it. No one. That's who. You. So, why bother? Save the soap. Rent a dish. Plates for rent. There are plates for rent. Enter offer code RENTALPLATE for a 20% plate rental plate rental plate. Tell me more about shredding. Tell me about just the zone that you get into when you're playing and your approach to playing.
Well, in my life, I've had two true loves. My wonderful wife, Rebecca, and then shredding. And shredding it's kind of a upper mind space where you.
I'm sorry. Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Now, see, our beloved researcher, the Internati Harper, just handed me a note, and it says that your wife's name is actually Dragon's Blood.
Oh, yeah, she has gotten that from also her time shredding. She legally changed it to Dragon's Blood back in 2014.
And she holds the world record for shredding the most amount of documents at one time. Now, she's not a musician,
no.
But because you have the shredding similarities, you two met on the Shredding World Tour. And so tell us about tell me how her approach to shredding inspires your approach.
Well, the Shredding World Tour, to give a little history about how we get there, we met. The Shredding World Tour it's kind of a expo almost of all the different shredders of the world, and that's music, that's machine, that's anybody who's shredding paper, anybody who's shredding people's thoughts, minds, souls.
They're like it's like a combination of a TED Talk and a concert.
Exactly. And so Rebecca Dragon's Blood and my band at the time, Cannibal Nihilism, we were playing together on the same stage, and we were rocking out, playing our most famous song, Cello Bass Drop 20.
Cello Bass Drop 20?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got started, one of my first instruments was the cello.
So this is a death metal band.
This is a death metal
But
band.
You're playing the cello.
At that point, I was playing an electric cello.
And did your wife, Rebecca, the Dragon's Blood, join the band with her paper shredder?
She was paper shredding as fast as she could, and she actually kept up pages per minute with beats per minute. And we were going like 95 beats per minute, and she was just jamming in those pages as fast as they would go. And there was a point where the sounds just commingled and just coalesced so that everyone in the room just started vibrating and instantly had heart palpitations and massive hospital event.
And you weren't intimidated by her because she shreds the gnar pretty hard.
Oh, she does. She does.
Tell me about the gnar.
The gnar is a very difficult paperwork assembly machine, and it is or disassembly machine. The gnar actually looks more like a wood chipper.
But it turns the paper into a fine powder.
Yeah, and you can just sniff it off of whatever you want.
You can sniff it, but you can also snowboard on it.
And so she shreds on that on her snowboard.
And it's pretty profitable, right? You started a NAR business.
A snowmaking business, but we call it shred the NAR. So it's the sort of thing where she would work for a big company doing fraudulent loans out to many different home buyers that were unstable, and then she would turn around, shred those documents, and create a paid-for paradise vacation for the employees.
And you figured out how to take the shredded documents, the snow, and you actually fashion guitars out of them, sort of like fiberglass, but it's more fine than fiberglass.
It is the finest glass. It's almost glass. It's because glass is basically sand heat blasted, and when you heat blast paper, it just kind of lights on fire. So you gotta quickly scrub the ashes up, and so it comes up this like black, charred, this wicked, hell blazed material. So I've called it Caper's Foul, and it just welds into this nice, and it bends, and it kind of curls up, and it looks like a bunch of small claws just gripping into each other.
And what do you use for strings?
We find the biggest Palomino horses that we can, and we just pluck their tails one at a time, and then string them together and coil them.
See, that's interesting. You know, when I was a little boy in Chile, our guitar strings were actually made from human hair. They were plucked from the scalped remains of our relatives.
That's pretty hardcore.
I'll never forget it. I'll never forget the sweet music that we played on those strings to mask, the sound of the tears in our village. But getting back to the tour now, before the Vans Warped Tour, let's talk about some of the bands that you've discovered, where you discovered them, what they were doing.
Great. I think my most famous band that I discovered, and this was when I was writing, not playing, the most famous band I discovered was Chili Con Carne. And this was a few kids who were living out of, they were living in Eagle Rock in Los Angeles. And that's near you, right?
It is, yeah. Now, if my notes from our beloved researcher, the Internati Harper, are correct, they were living in the back of a Tommy Burger, just eating chili, surviving on day-old, two-day-old chili.
Two-day-old chili. They were sometimes working at the Tommy Burger whenever there was someone who was
too young to work at the Tommy Burger, but nonetheless working at the Tommy Burger.
They were, 15, 16 years old, and I found them, and I was like, you guys need help. So something that, underprivileged kids are kind of a soft spot for me. So I just took up a guitar, and I said, hey, if you want to learn how to play, come over to Uncle Slaughter's house, and I'll just give you a couple lessons. And so I was in town for 3 weeks, and we just kind of jammed out for that whole time. And then a couple months later, I took them to their first tour, and I made them cover themselves in the Tommy Burger chili and then just parade around while they're playing. And they actually got front cover Rolling Stone because they made such an impression.
Well, tell me about egging Slash's house.
That was a mistake on my part, and I'm so sorry, Slash, because sometimes when you're on the road, you get lonely, and then you start to drink.
Well, that was. Well, I guess Los Angeles for you is the road.
Yeah. Okay. That's not for you. I mean, California is way out. I'm smack dab in the middle of the country.
It's a large state, but for me, it's just a mental prison that knows no end. Now your egg Slash's house.
Yeah, that was actually on my third time in LA. I was with another group of kids who I was trying to make into a band.
And this is in the early 90s. This is when Guns N' Roses was at their peak. And the fact that Slash was even home was a shot in the dark.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was because not only did we egg his door, we actually egged his door right as he was opening his door to let his daughter go to prom. So we got her and her dress and her date and Slash all in one. And that's bingo. That's egg bingo right there. So I think it was the best egging and it was the worst egging.
And it's common knowledge that Slash doesn't like anything oval.
No, he only likes things in very flat, long shapes, but not like, he hates long surfboards, skateboards. He hates eggs. He hates people's heads. That's why he has so much hair to just hide the shape of his own head. And so once those eggs started flying, his fire got up in his eyes. And he actually tore a kid's limb off and beat him to death with it.
And I think the biggest surprise of the chase was that he chased you down on a pogo stick.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't want to get in a car because it just would have taken too long. So he grabbed his pogo stick and he was doing front flips the whole way.
Menacing.
Oh yeah, I'm not even able to do one front flip on a pogo stick, but that man had the core strength of 1,000 gymnasts.
And his hair didn't get caught in the gears or anything. He always looks like that, doesn't he?
He does. Even when he was done ripping off that kid's arm and then his beating him and then pogo sticking away and then landing on top of one of the fences of a neighbor and then howling at the moon, his hair was just perfectly permed, perfectly down to past his shoulders, and he just looked at us and we knew we were in the presence of a legend.
Now tell me about your band. You guys you made up / guest played, I guess, is that how you would say it, on your album, and then he went on tour with you for a little bit in the late 90s, and you actually found yourself in New Hampshire battling a killer clown that had haunted your youth.
Yeah, so that band was Revving Tile's Motorbike, and I have never been more happy to be in a band because that one was just happenstance. We all met at the Copacabana in New York and then just completely did 4 shots, decided we would be in a band, and then went on tour the next day. And Slash happened to be in town, and he and I instantly recognized each other, and we decided to let bygones be bygones because it was a dark time in his life and it was a dark time in my life. And so we went on tour.
And you have a lot in common because you make your own guitars and Slash makes his own weapons.
Yeah. And so that's actually how I got my signature axe, because I made my own Capers Foul guitar for Slash, and then Slash made a personalized fire axe for me.
And he forged the axe himself.
He did, from the fiery depths of Jersey.
And so this band, now obviously to fund the band, you played concerts, but you also had another purpose. Now you were out, you knew that there was this clown that was loose in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And he had to be stopped. Now, how did you stop him? And how did Slash even know how to find him?
So Slash actually, what people probably know about Slash and what's pretty obvious about Slash is he has a pretty good animal instinct, and he can smell different emotions. And so he just turned on his hate. His hate emotion.
The hate sensor.
His hate sensor. But what happens when he turns it on is he becomes that emotion. So he was awful for this entire time.
And so when that sensor was on, that attracted Hilary Swank.
Yeah.
And so she came to New Hampshire and she joined you in the hunt.
She did. And this was during she had just heard about the possibility of doing $1 Million Baby for the first time. It was a long-time production. So she had just been training for boxing for weeks. And so she was ready to really get into it. And so
That's when it was still a 50K baby.
that was, yeah, everything cost so much less back then. Like, inflation is crazy. But she showed up, and then so it was me, it was Slaughter, it was Slash, it was Hillary Swank, and it was Fire Blame. Fire Blame's my friend, Eddie.
Right, Eddie, who also goes by Ellen DeGeneres.
And that became a kind of a conflict of interest a few years down when Ellen DeGeneres came to the scene.
And Barney, the big purple dinosaur.
Again,
it was a motley crew you had.
Yep. We had a bunch of, we had the original Barney, we had the original Ellen DeGeneres. And so we went out to New Hampshire.
You also had that autistic kid that makes those YouTube videos where he makes paintings with his feet.
Oh, you're talking about David Blaine's kid.
I don't think that's who that is. I think David Blaine's kid is the magician that was also in your group. I think we're crossing it. Yes, he's also a painter, but he only paints images of the autistic kid who paints with his feet.
Marco.
So
that's...
right. So you had your crew assembled. You have your band, and you were able to defeat the killer clown with the power of death metal.
So basically, kind of what we talked about with the gay, we turned on the hate sensor, and the clown came out, and the clown actually kidnapped Marco and brought him into his lair. So we had to find the lair, solve a couple puzzles. Hillary Swank is great at puzzles, let me tell you that. She knows her way around puzzles. And we approached, and the clown came out, and he came out of the darkness, and he started shape-shifting. So we just started playing, and we just started shredding on it, and just echoing, and all the sound waves coming off. And we played so hard that the sound waves started to, you ever seen a sock boom?
Sure.
You know how, like, this kind of, like, mist comes out? That's literally sound waves pressing up on one another and then decompressing. And we started playing so hard and so fast that just like waved out in waves, and it kept hitting the clown and hitting the clown and hitting the clown. And every time it hit the clown, it took off some of his joy, his hateful joy, and some of his makeup. And so we just tore apart the clown bit by bit until he wasn't a clown anymore. He was just a creepy
Fox
dude.
News analyst.
He was a Fox News analyst, and that was how he first met Rush Limbaugh. And I wish the dude good luck from then on, but I knew this whole time he was going down.
And even though he's still employable, the clown and the makeup and the hate was also sucked into your gayness containment unit. And that sort of overloaded it because it was clashing styles, right?
Yeah.
And so your containment unit actually did have a leak. It didn't explode, but it was close. And what did that caused?
Well, that was the first riot, and when the gayness and the hate and all that mixed and that leaked out, Rosie O'Donnell was born. And we just haven't been able to put her back since.
That's true. Nobody actually understands that Rosie O'Donnell was born at 30.
Yeah.
Right, it just came right out.
No one, I still can't prove it, but has anyone seen a picture of her from before?
Has anybody ever seen a picture of her mother?
No.
Our beloved researcher, the Internati Harper, has just handed me a picture of Rosie O'Donnell's mother, and essentially looks like a Russian nesting doll. Just a bigger Rosie O'Donnell with a smaller Rosie O'Donnell inside a smaller Rosie O'Donnell, inside a smaller Rosie O'Donnell, inside a smaller Rosie O'Donnell.
And you know what happens?
Go away, Addie. Leave. Inside a smaller Rosie O'Donnell.
I feel like you don't have to be that harsh to the girl or your researcher or whatever. I mean, I have a couple assistants, and I like Chet. He's my assistant right now, and he's a nice guy. He's just trying to learn the ropes of music.
Well, our beloved researcher actually listened to one of your albums in our sound listening booth, but unfortunately that was for higher personnel, and the waves actually blew the joy right out of her, as well as her feelings and her emotions. So you can be as mean to her as you want, and nothing will ever happen. Addie just blinks and researches.
That sounds like the perfect person. We're
For college credit.
we're currently working with the government to figure out ways in which we can use heavy metal to desensitize the population. Because
Why would you want to desensitize the population?
well, in times of great stress or in times of like a natural disaster, if you're able to just like shred off a chord, and then maybe a volcano's about to erupt, and you just shred a chord, and then everybody's calm about it, and they're okay, and they file away in a very calm and relate slow manner. They just walk single file to their shelters, and they don't freak out, because what happens in a disaster is a lot of panic. And so we're just using heavy metal and screaming in order to make people calm.
And how do you come up with your lyrics?
Have you ever listened to lyrics before?
I have, yes.
So lyrics are basically poetry.
Sometimes.
And I think that poetry comes from the heart. And so to me, it's about listening to your heart and listening to what your heart has to say, and then
even if it's a severed heart,
even if it's a severed, bleeding, blackened, grotesque,
and a severed tongue,
and severed toes, and severed throat. No matter how much severance is in your heart, you have to bring it to the table. And so I just take whatever's in my heart and I write down a bunch of words, and then I pick the words randomly on a dartboard, and then I put them together, and then you just say them as fast and as loud and as incoherently as possible.
Because it doesn't really matter what you're saying when you're screaming it. It's all about posturing, right?
Yeah,
it's all about stage presence.
Your attitude matters more than the sense that you're making.
Right. Now, if you're holding a weapon, it's easier to command a room than if you're not holding a weapon. So the weapon is your voice, and you are unleashing it on the audience.
I'm also holding an axe, but yeah, my voice.
Right. Your voice. It's a golden voice. It's a screaming, loud voice. And it's the voice for Guitar World. Now, what's next? What do you have planned? What's the next tour? What's the next album? What's the next monster?
So the next monster, I'm actually working currently right now with a new band, Eagles Are Us, and the whole entire thing that our band does is we just scream like eagles for 5 minutes per track. We just cry like eagles into the void.
I didn't know an eagle could cry.
Eagles weep every time you hear an eagle. It's actually just weeping for its loss and for the passage of time and for everything that has happened. Eagles are very emotional creatures, and they feel a lot that we humans can't, because they're more in tune with the airwaves and with the wind as it brushes up against them. Airwaves carry emotion. I already said this, and it's guaranteed. Like, airwaves carry emotion, and eagles feel all the airwaves. So we're gonna do a concert. Actually, we have a set at the 2020 Coachella. We're on one of the small stages, and we're gonna release. We've tried it out already. We release 18 eagles into the air as we play, and we tried it out in Houston at the Rage, Toil, and Death Party, and that ended very badly. So we're still trying to figure out how to work correctly with the eagles.
Maybe not soaking them in kerosene is a better way to go.
Once we threw that firecracker piñata, I have never seen so many burning eagles.
Now I do applaud you for trying to put a live eagle in a piñata. It didn't quite work the way anticipated. Luckily, no eagles were harmed. In fact, the eagle might have enjoyed it. had it not been starring from being in there for days, encased in confetti and cheap Mexican glue.
Well, we actually, it was supposed to be that the wings would sprout out and it would fly like a Pegasus pinata, but the eagle had eaten all the candy that was in the pinata and gotten a little bit sick, so it just kind of sat there. And so when people opened up the pinata and just saw the eagle just there, they were so shocked. But it's fine now. It's fine. It's recovered completely, and Eduardo is flying up in the skies again.
Now, your band's on stage. The four horsemen of the apocalypse come raining down. They're coming towards you. What are you singing? What are you playing to defeat them?
I think I play my seminal classic. This is the end of time, the beginning of death. And that is something that just, you play it and it talks about the four horsemen raining down, and it talks about one champion who's there, and he stands in the way, and as the four horsemen come, he just strums his guitar and it just blows them all away in a loud, epic chord, and it makes it feel like there's a battle going on. And as I'm playing, the horsemen are trying to get me. And it's just a song to remind people of the end times and how amazing life is, and that God is great, and that the world can be good.
That's actually incorrect. Andy Slaughter Kittleberg, the article I'm Just Riffin', Tales from the Tour, Guitar World. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, rock on, man. Rock on.
Coming up next week on the Sidebar, Chili Rellenos. They're relentless. I'm Sebastian Morales, saying see you next time.